Welcome to the introductory episode of Drive Chat. This is a series of discussions that we will be having with industry experts, all of them in their field of expertise, offering us opinions, facts, and other information that will help us run our businesses. This, of course, does not replace our normal colloquium, which takes place every 6 to 8 weeks. The fundamental difference between this and that is that's a group of panelists that are talking to a variety of subjects, all on a common theme. In this, our first episode of Drive Chat, we have, fortunately, individual guests from the United States, and I'm going to introduce them to you. We have Corey Woinarowicz from NOCELL and Barrie Arnold from Ping. Please do join us, Barrie and Corey, and what I'd like to do is get your expertise on the matter under discussion, which is distracted while driving. I think everybody knows that we have a relationship with you, and so thank you for sponsoring this, our first event. But just before we talk to distracted while driving, I was looking at some of the top 10 automotive technology advancements in 2021. And point number 3, and I read it, it says connected mobile apps, which amongst the 10 or the 9 others, it's absolutely fantastic. But I think that brings with it its own set of challenges. In a world where connectivity is given preference over many other things, distracted while driving, which is your field of expertise, is a major problem. Now, we know that it encompasses more than just the use of a cell phone, but for the purposes of this discussion, we're going to talk about how that impacts on our use of mobile technology. So I've prepared 10 questions for discussion, please. I'd love you to feel free to just chip in where necessary. And it's not really about your preference, because I do know that both of you have expertise in this matter. If I can kick off with question number 1, it is a fact that I don't know that any country in the world where government doesn't give priority or significant attention to the dangers of using a mobile phone while individuals are driving. If that's the case, though, what do you think is it that is needed in order to get individuals, the drivers, in other words, to change this behavior where they are committed to using cell phones? What's your opinion? Corey, maybe you want to
thanks for having us.
Oh, yeah, well, okay.
It is a global problem, and every country has a unique look at what they're trying to do with it, but there are many other factors that are involved in what happens behind the wheel and what happens outside of the vehicle. And I think first and foremost, fundamentally, it's incredibly difficult to enforce phone use while driving. It's not like a seatbelt where you can see it. It's not like speeding where you can measure it. People are usually looking at it while they're driving or at a red traffic light robot, as we say in South Africa. And so catching someone doing it or in the act is often very difficult. And then proving it, in many countries, including the US, you have to go and look at phone records to make sure that the person was indeed on their phone. They could say, no, I had a sandwich in my hand, or I was changing the radio, or something else. So from an enforcement perspective, it is so difficult to catch people and therefore give them a ticket and get that money back that most law enforcement agencies have really given up on doing so on a consistent basis. They have sting operations where they'll place police officers at busy intersections, but really pulling someone over and saying, all right, I caught you on your phone. You know, if they're on their phone and they're speaking, that's one thing, but texting and driving, which is a far more dangerous aspect of distracted while driving, is a very difficult thing to enforce. Okay. So I think that's really a challenge.
Barrie, just now we'll talk to what technology you know of on your side that will address that. Corey, your comments, please.
I think Barrie hit it right on the head. It's like the honor system now, right? You put a rule in place and you expect people to follow the rules. But this addiction to the phone and to the technology is so strong. You know, the definition of addiction is giving up everything for one thing, right? And that's exactly what the drivers are doing now. So you know, the the people at the Virginia Transportation Tech Institute, they said, technology got us into this problem, and technology is going to have to get us out of this problem. And that's the truth. So you're going to have something in place to take it out of the hands of the driver, right? Okay. So that they do not have the option of picking up the phone or not picking up the phone, or answering a text or not answering text. You're going to have to put technology in place to help, be the parent for these drivers.
Okay, it's interesting that you draw that analogy. Just now, please, if I don't ask the relevant question, will you talk to what has happened during COVID, or where that addiction has actually gone? Because I think there's some interesting information about that. Question number 2. So, what are some of the reasons that you may have encountered why drivers see the need to have this fixation with using their phone? What are some of the feedback that you had?
I'll take this one first, Barry. So for me, for working in the fleet space, the commercial fleet space, there's a couple of different reasons why, right? The first one is they want to have the most current scheduling. So if they have a reroute, they want to make sure that they can get to that reroute immediately, instead of having to pull over and stop the vehicle and take that 10 minutes. They want to do it on the fly, and they want to make sure that they're not wasting any time, mileage, or fuel to get to their next stop as quickly as possible. With the hours of service being, every single minute counts for them to get their daily tasks done. So I think that's one of the things. And then it's just that addiction to the buzzes, beeps, and dings of the cell phone, right? They want to know, hey, who texted me, who messaged me, who sent me a TikTok video, whatever. So it's just that addiction to the sounds and the buzzes of the phone as well.
Okay, thanks, Corey.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the challenge for particularly commercial drivers, you're on the job, you're on the clock, time is money. And when you hear that noise, it might be something to do with work. Right. And while I've signed a policy that says no phones while driving, I'm also expected to provide exceptional service and be ultra responsive. So right. There are really conflicting ideas there of don't touch your phone, but make sure that you don't miss that message. And if you're a traveling salesperson and you get an email saying the meeting's been canceled, that could be an opportunity for you to save time and go back to the office.
Yeah, okay.
And very rarely is it an urgent message. But when it is, it could dramatically change your day. And that, I think, is one of the driving factors for people to disobey the policy that they've signed and disobey common logic of I shouldn't be using my phone, while behind what ultimately becomes a weapon of mass destruction when you kill a pedestrian or a cyclist or crash into a car with other people in it.
Yeah. Can I just talk to, in the States, and I'm not sure what the latest number is, and it's seen progressively more and more states outlawing the use of cell phones. From what you've seen, what do you think is good about regulations that apply to the use of or preventing the use of cell phones, or ineffective? Have you identified any of the loopholes anywhere?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges that we have in the States, and this is fairly global as well, is that it's not illegal to use your phone in every state. And that absolutely blows my mind. Most states it is. And then there are varying degrees of using your phone. So you can't use your phone in your hand to make a phone call, right, versus you're allowed to use your phone for GPS or tapping on the screen or looking at a message, versus looking at your phone when you're stopped in traffic or at a red light. And so from one state to the next, people don't actually know what's good and what's not good, what they're allowed to do. Fundamentally, they shouldn't be doing anything on their phone. But there's such a fogginess of information here in the US. And I think to some extent, there is that same level in other countries that people do what's right for them. What's in it for me? I have that addiction. My phone just buzzed. I got a surge of dopamine to the brain saying somebody needs something from me. And so I'm going to pick up that phone because, look, I've never been in a crash before. And that's kind of the bad logic that's being used, because they've never been caught before either. So in fact, I don't know anyone that's got a ticket from having their phone in their hand. And so
in South Africa, I know a lot of people who've paid cool drink money, Barry.
Well, yes, but that's different. You don't actually write a check and send it in. And
Corey, can I just skip to the next question for you specifically? Sure. Because remember, we're talking to fleets. you would agree that many companies have good policies in place from a health and safety perspective. Barrie touched on it briefly, but why do you see these policies make no difference?
Well, a policy is only as good as the enforcement and the measurement behind it. So if you have a policy, but you have no way to enforce that policy or to make sure that the driver is compliant, then it's nothing but a liability, right? It's nothing more than the sheet of paper they sign on the first day that they start with the company. So you have to have a way to enforce that policy, to prove that you're enforcing that policy, and to be able to enforce that policy from the top down within the entire company. The culture of safety has to be in place as well. An example is this: I was visiting a fleet in the Midwest this last week, and they have a policy, and they say that they adhere to that policy, and they're working with us on a pilot program. But the fleet manager kept texting the driver. So, I mean, they were breaking their own policy from the inside out. So, I mean, you have to have the culture. You have to have, I mean, it's got to be top to bottom, you know, front end to back end on everything that you're doing. So you've got to be able to enforce that policy.
No, thank you very
much.
much.
And I'll add to that, it's not good enough to just have a policy and then bury that in a drawer somewhere. It has to be reinforced. There has to be training. Yep. There has to be data used, whether it's a camera or some kind of app on how the phone is being handled and used within the cab. And of course, blocking those apps that you shouldn't be used, like TikTok and YouTube, which, believe it or not, get used regularly.
Right.
Don't you also think that leadership from the top is important? How often do you see that you mentioned the supervisor, but what about the senior exec? I must just, Barrie, you know, ex-South African, the road to Durban, Van Riemen's Pass, which is kind of the midway point over there. And it's not the current Minister of Transport, so I can't be, you know, taken to task for this. One of the previous ones, he gets down there and he's talking to people about road safety. He gets into his car and he doesn't put his seatbelt on. You know, so where's the leadership from the Minister of Transport? And I do hope that we see some change over there. Here's one. Because, look, I agree that the point I made that technology is a problem. But what do you see? And you can talk to it from your perspective. What would technology do, or can it do, to help us with this problem for both of you?
Well, I mean, I think it starts with some type of technology that removes the distraction of the phone from the vehicle, right? And I mean, combining the two technologies that you have on this call right now, you know, the ping technology is phenomenal for still being hands-free and still being able to receive a message verbally and being able to say, you know, read that message, hey, at the next stop, pull off so that you can get your reroute. You have to be able to take away the TikToks and the Netflix and the, you know, all the different apps that are so distracting that they're causing people to, you know, get into horrific crashes. Every single company that I've talked to over the last 90 to 120 days has a story about a horrific crash because, hey, my driver's 20 years in and he's perfect driving record. And then just this once he looked at his phone and all of a sudden he T-bones blows an intersection and T-bones somebody. I mean, too many stories like that all over the United States, North America, you know, all the places that we are located. So, you know, I think you have to put a technology in place to remove the number one distraction from the vehicle while the vehicle's in motion.
Thanks. Barrie, to you. Can I just pick up on a conversation we had some time ago? You mentioned the word cognitive disruption. Just talk to us about this in the ping application, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that there is the visual distraction of looking at your phone and not looking at the road, but there's also the cognitive distraction where your brain is thinking about what that message could be. Yep. And therefore you're not actually driving the vehicle. Your brain is somewhere else. It's wondering whether the message is urgent, wondering whether it's that important email you're expecting, wondering whether the meeting's been canceled. And that level of cognitive distraction is equally dangerous in the fact that you're driving a vehicle and that you could be involved in an accident. So you're actually thinking more about, I hope the next traffic light is red so I can see my message, than you are focused on traffic that's crossing by on either side of you.
Right.
Thanks for making this a real world discussion, because that's what I think viewers would like to see. Here's one that, now, I don't think there's anybody who will be viewing this that doesn't know what NOCELL is and what ping is. All right. So please, we're not trying to sell the product, but
right.
here's a question. And I think, Corey, you're ideally suited to it. South Africans typically will find their way around something. Now, Barrie, you know this expression, scallum, all right? When, Corey, we were talking about a rogue device. Just talk to us what technology can do, and you've taken it, that will prevent people trying to find a way around using this technology.
Well, there's different measures that have been built into our technology, right? That should be built into any proactive distracted driving technology. Being able to detect a rogue device in the vehicle. So if the driver has their company phone or the phone that has the app on that takes away the other apps, but they have another phone that they're watching Netflix on, or they're doing a TikTok video while they're driving, or CDL Live, or whatever they're doing, the technology should be able to detect if there's another rogue device in the vehicle, or if they're not supposed to have a passenger and all of a sudden they have a passenger in the vehicle. So we've had many discussions about how to catch somebody that's trying to get around it. So if they turn off Bluetooth, or if they turn off or they kill the app, the fleet admin would get an alert, and then the app would be turned on automatically, and then the Bluetooth would be automatically turned on. So there's so many different ways, but it's a cat and mouse game, right? You have to make sure you stay ahead of what they're trying to do in order to get around the system. And that's, being in the field and interviewing drivers gives us all the ammunition that we need to continue to work on that proactive approach.
Okay.
I'd like to add to that, if I might, Eugene. I think that there's a carrot and stick aspect to this.
Yep.
And really what Ping has done is created a voice-based platform that reads those important messages, only the important messages, not the rest of the garbage and the unsubscribed links and newsletters and surveys. What we want to do is be able to safely communicate with drivers in the field using voice rather than them looking at their device. And so what we've created is something that actually adds or enhances the driver's daily experience, rather than them having to pull over because there is a message waiting for them and it could be urgent. We've said we can save you time, we can save you frustration, we can save you fuel if that message does change your journey. But it also enables you to stay actively connected without having to look at your device. And so that is really the carrot or the hook for the driver to say, I'm going to use this app every time I get in the vehicle, because it could change my day. It could meaningfully change my day in a positive manner. So the combination of being able to block out TikTok and YouTube and still receive those urgent messages through the Slack channel or corporate email is really what gives drivers the ability to buy into the safety culture. And one of the other things that you can do with technology is you can show the driver their score. So how do you drive? Do you speed? Do you corner aggressively? Do you hit the brakes too hard? And how many times do you touch your device? In the early days of telematics, that was a report that only went to the fleet manager. And so a driver would get hauled into the office and say, wow, you're a terrible driver, and this is a written warning for you. And of course, the driver's saying, well, this is news to me. This is the first time I've heard of it. Yes. I think I'm a very good driver, so I don't trust your technology. Yeah. But now that it's an app-based service where the driver gets to see his or her score at the end of every trip, not in real time, but at the end of every trip, they can say, okay, there are a couple of things that I need to work on tomorrow or the next time that I'm on the shift. And so there is this level playing field for everyone that we are all bought into making the roads safer than they are today, and that we are all on the same page.
Okay. I think either you, Barrie, or Corey have used the word mini telematics at some stage or other. This is not intended to replace the conventional telematics system, but it's there just to keep the driver informed. So, any guys who are from telematics companies, don't feel threatened, please. This is not going to take away your livelihood, but it does provide an information database. Now, bearing in mind, guys, that we're talking about fleets. So what do you think is the role that companies should play in ensuring that the type of technology that we're talking about is used more pervasively? What do you think? And you know, South Africans, a good number of vehicles are company-owned vehicles. There's loads of trucks that are on the road. So what role do you think that they could, I would love to say should, but could play?
Well, I think that one of the misconceptions about safety is that if you have a crash, it's an insurance claim and we get on with it. What you don't take into account is all of the other losses that take place during a crash. There's productivity loss, whether it's an injury, that God forbid it's a fatality. But if that vehicle is out of commission and it's a vehicle that you need in order to do the job because it's got a bunch of equipment in it, or an employee is injured and therefore not able to show up for the next 2 weeks, there are legal proceedings, there are insurance claims, insurance rates go up. So that the total cost involved in what is, in the discussion today, a preventable crash is significantly greater than most CFOs and most business owners actually realize. They're looking at the line item of the insurance claim and the increase in your rates, but they're not looking at all of the soft costs and the losses that occur. So once they take that into account, they should really look at the opportunity to invest in what is not very expensive technology to prevent the losses that accrue during the normal course of business. And if you invest for both your employees and your business, it's a win-win.
Okay, Corey, just before you comment, can I just ask you to talk to the role that you think insurers could benefit by having this technology available as well, please?
Sure. Like Barrie was saying, there's a ripple effect on every single crash that occurs that is greater and greater. So having proactive distracted driving technology in the cab, it takes away the crashes that don't occur, which are really tough to measure, the crashes that don't occur. You can go year over year to see your stats and what your losses are. But I think more of it is it's insurance for the insurance, right? To make sure that if they do get into some sort of litigation, that they are protected by saying, hey, look, we've taken every single measure that we know right now to make sure that the company is in the best place, best position for themselves to be as preventative as possible. And that's, that is the most that they can do, and keeping the drivers safe from themselves.
Okay, thanks very much. I've got two final questions, and maybe I can just split the two between you. Firstly, do you think that showing videos or showing something where people see the tragic consequences associated with the use of a cell phone are the way to go? That's the first question. And then maybe you feel that, Corey, but Barrie, to you. So what other ways are there that you think that we could go about that would sensitize people to the dangers of this? So Corey, you want to fly first?
Sure. Unfortunately, though, I think those videos are very effective, right? It's the videos that way back when old guy like me got my driver's license, they showed movies about kids that were not paying attention while they're driving, right? And it's the same sort of thing. You have to see what the actual consequences are of your actions, right? And it's not just, hey, I'm going to get a ticket. Hey, I'm going to run into, a pole in the parking lot. No, it is actually people dying or people's lives are at stake. The driver of the truck that you're trying to, help out, plus the innocent, minivan that was following the rules and they end up, you end up losing the life of a family or whatever. There's a lot of effects that go into place with every preventable crash that occurs out there. So yeah, it's gory and all that stuff, but it is absolutely necessary to show people that this is a real problem with real consequences. Thanks,
Corey. Barrie, for you, please.
Yeah, so unfortunately or fortunately, I can tell you categorically that those videos work. So a few years ago, we put out a video and we didn't market it to anyone. We just posted it on YouTube. It has 6.8 million views today. And it is just that. It's a mother and child in the crosswalk trying to cross the road. And there's a young executive who's on his phone trying to look at his text messages, and all of a sudden you hear the crash, you don't see what happens, and then we rewind the whole thing and he's going away in handcuffs and there's an ambulance, and it is fairly heart-wrenching to consider what the outcome would have been. So they absolutely do work. Sadly, I think the challenge is that we don't believe that we'll ever be in that crash. So we are better drivers than the other idiots out there on the road. And so when you're trying to multitask and get to your next appointment and do this and that and the other, just a couple of seconds is not going to kill anyone. And so I really think that you have to combine technology with potentially something else. And in my mind, I would love to see some kind of rewards program where it's tied to your actual driving score, where not a discount on insurance, but something that the individual driver can redeem on a regular basis, like a free cup of coffee or tickets to the movies or a smoothie or a burger from KFC or whatever, something that's tangible. I worked in a different industry years ago in the parking industry, and we were trying to get people to use their mobile devices to pay for parking. And commercial drivers just never used it because they were like, nah, it's too much of a hassle. I'm just going to swipe the credit card and get done. And as soon as we told them that they could earn points and rewards for using this service, and it's the same with distracted driving apps, as soon as there's something in it for me, whether I'm a fleet driver or a consumer, I'm going to do my best to earn those rewards. Who doesn't love free? So I think that's an important component, and it can be something that's run by government, by insurance, by the company themselves. There are a multitude of aspects to a rewards program that can and should be implemented across the board.
Right. 30 seconds for each of you, just to wrap up, please. What parting message do you have for us? And if you include a bit of a sell on the product, please feel free. Corey.
I'll tell you what, it's I'd like to see the companies invest in the safety more than just talking about it, right? Take actions, keep your drivers safe, keep the public safe by putting whatever proactive technology. Of course, we'd love you to do NOCELL and ping combined to keep everyone safe, but the technology does work. It does change habits. And I'd like to see, it be a standard practice for people to take actions to protect their drivers from themselves.
Yes, thanks, Corey. Barrie?
Sadly, the numbers are going up, and we saw this even during COVID. And so sitting on the fence and saying, well, it's not going to happen to us, and if it does, we've got insurance for that, is not the right approach. The fact that younger drivers are coming into the field and they're less experienced, they've also been addicted to their devices longer than us old guys have, means that we have to be way more proactive with technology. And as Corey said earlier, put technology in place to solve the technology problem. So be proactive, don't bury your head in the sand, and understand that for a small investment, the return is going to be much greater for you, but also for the community. The reality is that we all have to take responsibility for the fatalities, the preventable fatalities, as well as the injuries. The research in South Africa is that distracted driving has about a 52% rate of all vehicle crashes, which costs the economy 307 billion rand a year, and it's completely preventable. So if you put 307 billion rand back into the economy, or just a fraction of that back into the economy by being responsible and being more proactive, everyone wins.
Yeah. Can I just conclude before you guys go? And if I can get your affirmation, it would be great. The fact that people spend lockdown addicted to their phone for good reason, that addiction hasn't left them when they've gone back on the road. And therefore, we see greater incidents of people using their phone. And, of course, when you pull up at a traffic light, the first thing people do is reach for their cell phone. They want to check messages. And we have taken it almost as a mantra. If we can get people to focus on the task of driving as opposed to the task of trying to engage in other activities. We know that multitasking is a myth. It doesn't work. But I do think up until now, the average South African company hasn't had the means to be able to enforce those policies. And here we have it, whether we use ping in isolation or NOCELL, but preferably a combination. I do think we can contribute to those. We talk about 15,000 deaths every year. How many of them are as a result of distracted while driving? I don't know. But let's assume it was 25%. It'll make a big difference.
Sure.
Barrie, Corey, thank you very much for joining us. We hope to see you guys again, and thank you for sponsoring this event for us. Do take care. and drive safe. And then I'll just conclude with some wrapping up comments. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you.
By way of conclusion, in the upcoming episodes, we will be talking to matters such as telematics. How do you in South Africa choose amongst the 300 odd telematics companies that are listed? How do you choose the best one for your business? What about onboard cameras, the technology that is associated with that? Is there predictive capabilities with regard to analytics? We will be talking to that. How to, as a fleet manager, how to manage your fleet successfully during these challenging times. And then we'd also like to talk to the psychological challenges that drivers are experiencing while on the road. This will be available on our website. So until our next episode, please drive safe and don't be distracted while you're driving.